Am I serious? Well, yes and no. I like to say that I'm postironic, or on layer 2 of the irony scale. That means I try to talk about serious things by going way over the top with it. I say things that have a comedic punchline. I say things that sound like a joke, but when you think deeper about it, have a bit of a kernel of truth to it. I act ridiculous because the truth is ridiculous, and acting ridiculous is the only way to get you to take it seriously. A refresher on what just happened, though. I made a viral video, a video directed to the CEO of Reddit, where I gave you a peek into the insanity that is Reddit moderation and how it affects Reddit, the third largest social media platform in the US. In the video, I came off like a crazy person who was taking a silly topic like Reddit moderation way too seriously. And I looked crazy because the situation is crazy. I was inspired to make this video by my favorite content creator, JReg. He is also a comedic content creator who created a video about the multiple layers of irony. And since I'm now a viral influencer, this is my attempt to contribute to the irony discourse by describing and defining layers 3 and 4 of irony that add on top to JReg's kind of previous definitions of layers kind of 0 through 2 of irony. Specifically, I'm going to be using these definitions of irony to describe a very online topic known as lawcows that I've become intimately familiar with after my big viral moment. So what is irony? Well, in my framework, irony is critique, and each layer above the previous layer of irony is a critique of the critique. So what is layer 0 of irony? Well, that's just sincerity. That means just having an opinion, having a goal, having a direction, a philosophy, any just act or opinion or situation that involves agency. It is not in reference to something else. It is not the opposite of a different position. Instead, it is an opinion or philosophy that stands on its own. Notice that we can even have two opposing positions that are on layer 0 because they stand on its own without it being in reference to the other position. Some examples might be the Republican or the Democratic Party. They are in some sense opposed to each other, but they still have ideas and philosophies of their own that don't need to be defined as being against the other party. Layer 0 is everywhere. The real world is mostly full of layer 0 sincere beliefs. Well, that was easy. So let's get to layer 1 of irony. If layer 0 is defending a belief, layer 1 is attacking it. Layer 1 of irony requires the acknowledgement of the opposing belief and positions itself so as to attack it or tear it down. It is fundamentally destruction, not creation. And in order to destroy, there must already exist something that was created to then destroy. Some examples. Some people say that sarcasm is a layer 1 belief because you're saying the opposite of what you mean, but I mean something a little bit different from that in my framework of irony. The best example that I have of a layer 1 position would be the Socratic method, or the person who's constantly asking questions about somebody else's belief and pointing out flaws without necessarily even having a position of their own. Elitism, credentialism, or gatekeeping is a layer 1 belief because it fundamentally says that there are people out there who are not qualified, are not competent enough to have a position, do an action, have a goal, etc., etc. And that's why we need these credentials or gatekeeping to make sure that the wrong people are not engaging in certain actions. Layer 1 is exclusionary. And to get to my most important example, I would argue that the internet itself, especially social media in the digital age, is fundamentally full of layer 1 beliefs and critiques, which stands in stark contrast to kind of the beliefs that are in kind of the real world. What I mean by this is, I think that social media, especially websites like Reddit, are not really about doing things, and they're more about sharing and critiquing things that other people are doing. It's not about you putting things out into the world, it's about you attacking things that other people do. This layer 1 philosophy resonates through the entire DNA of the internet, both from the very sarcastic and critical humor that is common on websites like Reddit, and even down to the very features that make up these websites, such as, resharing, retweeting, commenting, and kind of features like that that are baked into the very infrastructure of the internet. Websites are built to make you attack, critique, reshare, comment, or retweet. And this is so ubiquitous that I don't think people could even imagine it to be any other way. It's hard to even put a finger on what is truly wrong with the internet, let alone fix it, beyond vague hand waves and attacks against the algorithm. And I hate this. I hate layer 1 of irony because it's fundamentally destructive and about attacking the things that other people do. And I think that this internet-driven, very critical philosophy is what drives very huge problems in kind of the world that we see today. And this is both on the internet and in real life. We live in an ironic, sarcastic, and critical world where we gawk at the things that other people do as opposed to create on our own. And I will put a disclaimer on this that I'm moralizing something that doesn't automatically have to be moralized, and certainly has some upsides as well as downsides. There's nothing wrong with, gatekeeping our doctors or civil engineers, and critique itself isn't automatically bad, but I stand by my moralizing nonetheless. What does layer 2 or post-irony mean? Post-irony is the critique of the critique. If your body is sincere at layer 0, then layer 1 is the sword that attacks your body, and layer 2 would be the shield that defends itself against the sword or the critique. Layer 2 is not a position on its own. If it was a position on its own, then it would be layer 0 at Sincerity. No, it only exists as a reference to a reference. The way that I use post-irony is I say things that I believe, but I do it in a very over-the-top way that makes it sound like I'm joking. I do this as kind of a shield and a way of kind of dismissing criticism. This works because if I say something that I know sounds silly, well, it becomes much harder for other people to attack me for something that I have acknowledged already is the case. Or in other words, I was only pretending to be retarded, therefore you can't attack me for it. I live and breathe in layer 2, but I'm told this can be confusing to many. So why would one want to exist as a reference to a reference? Why not just be sincere? I mean, the opposite of an opposite should cancel back out to sincerity, right? Well, here's why. In this very internet-driven, sarcastic, and destructionary society, the kind of attacks from the peanut gallery will destroy anybody who's trying to do something sincerely. It is very hard to defend yourself against every attack, every nitpick, every whispering voice from the crowd telling you that you suck and you should therefore give up. You simply cannot fight against every piece of criticism, which is why you need a tool to defend yourself against the very concept of criticism. A post-ironic defense goes something like this. Yeah, your criticisms are right, but that's why I'm going to succeed anyway. Yeah, I don't have credentials, but I don't care. I'm going to go for it regardless. Yeah, I'm going to make mistakes, but I'm going to learn from them and then pick myself back up and try over again. And finally, the best defense of them all, I was only pretending to be retarded, therefore you can't criticize me for being retarded. Some people would call this a cope, and in some ways they're right. Instead of disagreeing with the criticism, you're saying, yeah, the criticism is right, but it doesn't matter. And in this highly online, critical world, I think this philosophy of accepting criticism but not caring, of being willing to fail but try again, is the exact sort of thing that we need to get people back to believing things again. Some more examples of layer 2 post-irony defenses are being anti-elitism, anti-gatekeeping, or move fast and break things. That's actually a very Silicon Valley but layer 2 coded defense. Move fast and break things sounds a bit counterintuitive at first. Why would you want to break things? Well, it's not really that you want to break things. Instead, it's that you will move quickly if you don't worry so much about breaking things. It's about kind of accepting that that will happen and kind of going on and taking the advantage of speed anyway. Very layer 2 coded. The Grug IQ graph is another example of a very layer 2 meme. This one's about patriotism, and at layer 0 you have kind of the grug who is both, correct and also has kind of a very sincere patriotic belief. Then you have the center IQ person who's kind of the layer 1 critique, and he is, against kind of the patriotic grug, and he's kind of wrong in this image. And then at layer 2, you have kind of the very high IQ person who is also patriotic, but presumably for different reasons than kind of like the low IQ kind of grug, which is why this is an example of kind of like layer 2 patriotic propaganda is what we'll call it. This even expresses a very common quality among kind of like layer 2 thinking, and that is that it has a kind of a very self-aware, self-important, pseudo-intellectual, I'm better than you type kind of idea, where it says kind of you have a point, but it's not like the more basic point, it's actually kind of more complicated, but still correct. And finally, there's something to be very careful about with regards to layer 2 post-ironic thinking. And that is, if your body is layer 0, and poison is the layer 1 thing that is attacking your body, and antivenom is the thing that fights the poison. The astute listener will notice that if you drink a bunch of poison and then drink a bunch of antivenom right after that, you are not back to being healthy. It's not just that the antivenom counteracts all of the poison or criticism that's targeted against you. It's also that the antivenom has side effects of its own. And if you take too much of the antivenom, this is going to lead to very significant kind of problems with your way of thinking and going about life. Which leads us into a side tangent, which I am calling the meta-ironic black hole. Meta-irony is not the sarcastic opposite that is of kind of layer 1 irony, nor is it the sincere over-the-topness of layer 2 post-irony. Instead, meta-irony is something of its own. Instead, meta-irony is saying something that is masked in so many layers of irony that neither the listener nor even possibly you know what is even being said or what the point of it all is in the first place. Is the statement true? Is it false? Is it half true? Nobody knows. Some people like JReg and iDubbbz have said that meta-irony fits into layer 2 of irony, but I don't really think that fits. Let me explain why. In my framework, every even layer of irony, that is layer 0, 2, 4, and so on, is in agreement with the original layer 0 position in some way. Whereas the odd layers, that is layers 1, 3, 5, etc., are the critique or in disagreement with the original sincere layer 0. But meta-irony doesn't fit that pattern at all, because you don't know what they're saying. I think that meta-irony is something that you can enter at any layer of the irony scale, and it's sort of a black hole or vortex that tears away all of the meaning in your statement and can, send you spinning out up and down all across the layers. It gets even easier to enter into kind of the black hole the more layers that you go up. The black hole analogy works because it really does feel like your position is kind of spinning out of control. Are you being sincere? Are you being sarcastic? Post-ironic? Post-ironic? Nobody knows. That's why it's the black hole. And layer 2 really is where most people start getting sucked into kind of this black hole, which is why it can be kind of so confusing to many. In fact, the original viral video that I made, which was kind of addressed to Spez, the CEO of Reddit, kind of fell into this black hole. This is because there were some statements in the video which I thought were clear jokes, like Reddit moderators should be treated like celebrities. And then there was other things that I said were sincere, and there are other parts where I think I just got clearly carried away. Some people have called it cope for me to claim that it was all a joke in the first place, but looking back on the video myself, it's actually very difficult for even me to tell which parts are kind of real or were intended to be jokes, or were just kind of me kind of losing it in the moment. That's why I think I got sucked into the meta-ironic black hole, because the truth of the video really has been lost into the other. Another example of a meta-ironic content creator that people often bring up is Sam Hyde. He says a lot of kind of far-right statements now, but that wasn't always the case. When a lot of his content originally released, the meaning of it really was a mystery to a lot of people. Was he actually far right? Was he just joking? Or was he somebody who kind of got too deep into the character and then kind of changed their positions and became the person that they kind of joked about along the way? Now, that was a primer to irony. Now we're getting into the stuff that I feel like I've invented. I am defining layer 3 on the irony scale as the lawcow layer. Remember, an irony layer is critique, so layer 3 would be a critique of the critique of the critique of the original position. It is the shield breaker to the layer 2 shield. It attacks the concept of fighting back against criticism. This is why I'm calling it the lawcow layer, because attacking somebody for being a lawcow is a layer 3 argument. A lawcow is a very online term, both meant for somebody who is kind of worthy of being criticized and therefore can be milked for drama. But beyond just being a person who's worthy of ridicule, a lawcow is also sort of self-aware. That means that they know that they are the target of criticism, and they might in fact lean into it in order to kind of defend themselves against that criticism. And the very act of leaning into kind of the criticism and being the lawcow makes them even more of a lawcow by using this kind of defense against criticism by being the thing even more. In other words, the lawcow is using a strategy of kind of trying to fight back against criticism, and the accusation of being a lawcow against the person is instead criticizing that very behavior of kind of fighting back against kind of this kind of ridicule or these attacks. That's why it's the shield breaker to kind of like the shield that the lawcow is attempting to use against criticism. Layer 3 really is where things start to get very complicated. I feel like it's very easy to tell the difference between layer 0 and layer 2, sincerity and post-irony, because, a sincere position sounds very different than somebody being kind of over the top and hyperbolic, even though they still kind of mean the things that they're saying. Whereas I think layer 1 and layer 3 are much harder to differentiate, and I struggle to find any real examples of this. Layer 3 would be like saying the move fast and break things philosophy is a bad philosophy. But how is it that much different from just saying don't break things? People criticize others for moving too fast and breaking too many things all the time. In fact, moving too fast might in fact be the chief cause of people breaking too many things. So really there has to be kind of a differentiator between somebody who's just saying don't break things versus attacking the very philosophy of move fast and break things. A great example of a layer 3 attack would be the "I was just pretending to be retarded" meme. Layer 0 of the comic is the person being retarded. Layer 1 is the people in kind of the comic attacking the person for being retarded. And then layer 2 is the person attempting to dismiss criticism by saying, actually, it was a joke all along. And then layer 3 would be kind of the entire comic itself, because this is clearly an attack on the person who's pretending like he's kind of making a joke and therefore not actually being stupid. This is a layer 3 attack because it's attacking their kind of cope or defense against criticism. An issue with layer 3 and kind of the deeper layers of irony is a problem that I have invented called the nuh-uh problem. It goes something like this. A person says, "Hey, I did something cool." Somebody else says, "Nah, that sucks." And then the person responds by saying, "Nuh-uh." And then the response is, "Uh-huh, nuh-uh, uh-huh, nuh-uh," ad infinitum. Is each nuh-uhs and yeah-uhs a different layer of irony? I mean, I guess it's critiquing or disagreeing with the kind of critique before it. I don't feel like each of these things are new layers of irony. I feel like in order to ascend a layer of irony, the kind of statement or critique must truly understand kind of the self-referential nature of itself and its relationship to the other layers of irony. And finally, we have reached layer 4 of irony, another one that I have now invented, which I do not even have a name for yet. If you have a name, please kind of say so in the comments of this video. And I will attempt to use all of my energy left to break free of my earthly layer 2 bonds and extend into kind of layer 4 for just a few moments to give some examples. If layer 0 is your body, then the virus is layer 1, and your antibodies are layer 2. Do you know what that makes layer 3? Yeah, that's right, it makes it AIDS. And what does it make me? Well, I'm your sex education, baby. And you don't want to get AIDS. Listen to your sex educator. And AIDS isn't the thing that kills you. It attacks your immune system. It is the rest of the virus-like criticism that truly destroys you. And even more than that, AIDS is very difficult to cure. Once you have contracted kind of an illness that prevents you from fighting back against the very concept of criticism, you're doomed. You have AIDS for life, and even worse, you can transmit it to other people. And us level 4 sex educators are out here trying to warn you of the danger of AIDS, either with, condoms or abstinence. And you teenagers out there, you're just out there kind of having fun, laughing at us, not really kind of taking our warnings seriously. But seriously, I'm telling you, you really don't want to get AIDS. But let me dispense with the analogies and kind of get to the conclusion of my video by making a direct layer 4 argument. Remember, irony is a critique, so level 4 is attacking the level 3 lawcow position. And it would go something like, I know you're having a lot of fun with your kind of critique and ridicule at your target, and making your target kind of defenseless against criticism. Nay, you're making it so that if they even fight back against criticism, that kind of means that the attacks and criticism apply even more to them. And my response to that would be, why? Why would you hold such a philosophy that can be so accurately encapsulated by 2 words? Give up. Like, what are the good outcomes here? What are you trying to do? What are you trying to accomplish by attacking the very concept of fighting back against criticism? At least layer 1 is kind of useful. If you point out a problem, you can solve it, you can mitigate it, you can fix it. Whereas layer 3 is more just saying, nah, don't even try. The whole philosophy is just sad to me. It's a tar pit of despair that you can't escape from, and I reject it. And that's kind of my layer 4 attack on kind of the lawcow argument. If you have any arguments that or examples that kind of fit this layer 4 analogy or names for this layer 4, put them kind of in the comments below. Thank you for watching this video, and I hope you come out of this video as equally enlightened about the concept of irony as you are infected by it. Because I will warn you, there's no way back.